Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast, the podcast where two ladies play games, mumble profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome back to another Friday and another episode of the Wheel of Crime podcast. My name is Jenn.
It is, and my name is Emily. Woo!
Woohoo! Let's hear it for Emily.
Snap.
Snaps.
Oh man, I
my
felt
god.
so appreciated. Wow, all the attention's on me. What am I gonna do?
I don't know. What are you gonna do?
Literally nothing other than ask you how your week was, because that's what I do every time. Every time we do an episode and we introduce ourselves. So, was there anything you want to talk about from this week, Jen, before we get into our show?
No, this week's literally been exhausting. I'm so tired. I could go to bed right now. Genuinely.
That is felt. I don't know how it is where you are, Jen, but for where I am, it's been very, very cold and windy, which has done some very weird things for my sleep cycle, because I either keep waking up in the middle of the night thinking that I hear something in the distance and it's just, the wind literally, or it's just, freezing all the time. So that's been fun.
Yeah, it's been very windy here too. My puppy Dewey, new fun thing, very afraid of the wind.
Oh, very, very afraid of the wind.
Yes, he literally barks at the wind and it scares him. So going for walks has been really fun.
Ooh, I can only imagine. I think Dewey and Finn I don't have a Finn in my house. Fig must subscribe to the same newsletter or something, because he's also not a big wind guy. He actually has been yelling pretty much every day that it's been windy, trying to get us to turn the wind off. And he doesn't seem to understand when I explain to him that I can't actually do that. That is not one of my skills.
I mean, I would really love it if you could also turn it off. I will start yelling with Fig if that helps in some way.
I'll look into it and see what I can do. What I can do for you guys. I'll work on my wind powers in this next week before we record again.
Perfect. Amazing.
Oh gosh.
How was your week?
Yeah, it's just been like you said, with the whole tiring thing. I don't know, like you said, it's just, general exhaustion. And then it also snowed here quite a bit earlier this week, so that was also a real treat.
Yeah, we got that too.
I just love snow. Not sure if you knew that about me. It's one of my favorite things. Top 10 for sure. And then
really,
yeah, it's really good. And and then besides that, I guess. Oh, I didn't even tell you this. I'm not sure if we've spoken about this before on the show. I'm pretty sure we've mentioned it in passing, but I did decide to go to our 10-year high school reunion in June. I officially bought tickets for it, so I have to go now.
Tickets?
Well, just
tickets? One. Oh, I was like, are you taking your husband with you?
I asked him a while ago if he would want to come with me, and he's like, me go with you to your 10-year high school reunion? And I was like, that's a good point. Fair enough. I'll take myself out. But I will say, at the very least, it's at a place in the place that Jen and I once resided together as children that we haven't mentioned on the podcast before. The place we're going to does have good wings, so I am looking forward to it, at the very least that. And I am going with my cousin and a couple of other people who we all graduated with, so at least I won't be alone. I do have a plan in motion.
A group. Well, you'll have to let me know how it is, because I will not be attending.
I know. Apparently, that's also with other people I've spoken to who've either already had their 10-year reunions or have been invited to them, whatever. Apparently, not this. I will be, other than obviously the people I know, our group of people are going to be the only people that I know of who've gone to theirs. Most people I talk to now never went to theirs, or they didn't have one or something. It's apparently not really that common anymore.
I mean, personally, I see the appeal of going. I truly do. which is why I've thought about it. There has been contemplation, but I'm not going to go. But for me, I do not want to see any of those people. I have gone pretty out of my way in my life to avoid that situation. So why do it on purpose? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I see where I differ in that aspect. I think it's that I am not to say, I don't know if I would describe myself as like an extrovert, because I am pretty comfortable at home, but I am social. So at least like the people who I have kept in contact with over the years, like I still have a pretty good relationship with most of them. And I have like a group of like probably 10 to 15 people that we went to high school with that like I wouldn't mind seeing in public. So that's the only reason that I'm going, where I'm like, I know enough people where it wouldn't be the weirdest thing on earth, and it's kind of neat to see where people ended up if they're still around. So that's my goal.
I want you to take a video for me for a few things, and I will tell them to you after, because I don't want to come across as a bitch on the podcast.
Now you don't want to come across as a bitch on the podcast?
Okay, well, I'm trying to come across as a bitch, but I don't want people to know what I'm being bitchy about. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, I got you. We'll coordinate later. your master plan.
I want like video evidence of certain things, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah,
like,
I'll be your like little, like if you're the president, I'm the CIA. Like I'll be your little operative in this situation.
Perfect. You know what? I should just hire a PI to go for me.
That would be something. No, it'd be even funnier if you did, but it's somebody who's like super obviously like an old man or something, and they have to pretend like they actually went to high school with us. Yeah,
my name is Jenn.
Yeah, literally.
You don't remember me?
You don't remember. You don't know who I am. Like that. And I would, but here's the thing. I would be in on the bit. Like I would fully be like, yeah, like I literally went to Tim Hortons with him like every day. Like this is Jenn. But no, he'd have to wear a wig, and I would still have to pretend that it's you. Like, you know what I mean? So I'd be like, yeah, I went to.
You'd have to be like,
Tim Hortons with her, like, every day. Like this is my bestie. You don't remember?
We do a podcast together. It's really cool. You should listen.
Yeah, like fully. I would fully commit to the bit if you did that.
Oh, perfect. Well, maybe something to think about.
It is
something to put in the back pocket.
Right? And then that's like the one thing I did earlier this week that's kind of fun. And then other than that, for our listeners, just because I feel like we owe an update now for how often we've talked about it on the podcast, Jenn and I did finish the Throne of Glass series. It's been, we figured it out. We did the math. And by we, I mean Jenny, because I don't know how to do math. And she figured that it's been just over a year since we started the first book, and we just now finally finished it together.
The only caveat being neither of us have read The Assassin's Blade, which is like kind of like a 0.5 to the series, you know, it's like a prequel
it's like
book.
A prequel sequel type situation.
I'm pretty sure it's like fully prequel because it's about like Selena Sardothian as an assassin.
That would be, it would be a prequel to the very first book then, because when we meet her, she's like imprisoned and being released and being told to be an assassin again. And she's like, no, but my trauma, my assassin trauma.
You know what? Honestly, she's a whiny bitch through the whole series.
That is true. That is 100% true.
Someone had to say it.
Right? And for any of our listeners who are curious about what we thought of the series, I'm just speaking for myself when I say this. I could really get into it, but overall, I would give the overall series a 3.5 out of 10. No, 3.5 out of 5. I'm not sure out of 10. That just flew out of my mouth. But a 3.5 out of 5 stars, because I'm going off of my Goodreads ranking system I have in my head. Yeah. And then for the last book, I gave it a 4 out of 5, but I still kind of feel like I was being generous.
Yeah. I think I also gave it a 4 out of 5, and I do feel like that was generous, especially after Emily and I debriefed and like talked about all of our gripes, and now I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that I was mad about that.
Yeah, right? Well, it's a very long book, so it's really easy to be mad about a lot of things. But that's just my general take on the series now that we're done it.
Honestly, I concur with Emily's rating. That seems pretty solid to me as well. I would put myself right about in that range. A 3.5 out of 5 feels right.
Yep. And for any of our listeners who actually listen to this part of the podcast where we have a little bit of fun before we do our dark and
crime
sad show occasionally.
We do have a sad one today, so
yeah, exactly. So if you are one of our listeners who's like, but I've really been looking forward to these Throw to Glass updates, and I want to hear more about what you guys think of the series in the last book, because we could really get into it. Just let us know, and maybe we'll do like a little mini rant,
bonus episode.
Yeah, bonus episode, a little mini rant, a little mini rave about the things that we liked and didn't like about the series, because it is a big series. So I would be open to doing something like that if you guys are interested. So let us know. But I think that's pretty much it on my end. Is there anything that else you were wanting to share, Jen, before we get into it?
No, let's get right into our wheel of questions.
Yes, ma'am. Number 1.
Did your parents have any weird rules for you growing up?
I mean, tons. Like, and Jen already knows.
Yeah, your parents had tons.
Yeah, Jen already knows this. But as far as, like, my parents and weird rules go, there was a very... I would say when I was especially, like, an early teenager, there was a lot of weird rules that even today I think about it, and I'm like, I don't know. That's kind of a weird one.
Mm-hmm.
But there was just kind of a lot. I don't know if there's anything you remember from when we were kids that kind of rubbed you the wrong way or not, but...
She was not allowed to wear clear mascara.
Oh, yep.
She was not allowed to have sugar.
Yep.
She was not allowed to watch the Family Channel because that's too saucy.
They'd splurged and bought, like, I think it was like 30 Disney movies at one point, and that was all we were allowed to watch. Like, they would have other movies occasionally, but those were, like, that was, like, their stuff that we weren't allowed to watch. So we just had our selection of about, like, 30 Disney movies that we could watch, and we weren't allowed to touch anything else. So that was the one thing. So I've never, like, seen, like, some of the stuff that people used to talk about in school, like the Titanic or, like, other random stuff that, like, people liked and thought was great. I never had any of those experiences, but I could probably sing you every single song from any Disney musical that was made in the 90s or early 2000s. I could do that.
I feel like your parents had a lot of weird rules. Mine, I can't recall anything that's like crazy. The one rule that really pissed me off growing up was my mom had this rule where I wasn't allowed to have sleepovers anymore after I like turned 14 or 15. And I think it's because my sister had like snuck out or something at one of her sleepovers when she was that age. So my parents just like were like, no more.
See, which is weird to me because it almost feels like that should have been reversed, where like when you're a more vulnerable child, you shouldn't be allowed to have sleepovers. But instead they were like, no, it's fine. Jen, as a 9-year-old, can go wherever she wants and stay the night. But once she turns 14, that's when the trouble starts.
I know.
So weird.
I feel like I like got them to bend that rule for me a decent amount of times, but I just remember being like, this is bullshit.
What a load of baloney. Well, and then I will say it's a weird rule for you specifically, and I'm treating this as a rule because you have to do this every year. Jen's mom makes her shine the silverware for Christmas every year. For some it doesn't even get used. It's just for some reason. Just for fun, I guess. But Jen has to do it. That is non-negotiable. It has to be done.
It's because it gets tarnished and she wants it to look nice for company.
But that's the thing. It's in a room where nobody goes for Christmas. As far as I remember, it was the house you lived in, so I imagine people to go in there sometimes.
Yeah.
But like by my recollection,
people use. So it's like all in the form. Okay, this is like it's such an older person thing to do, like have a formal dining room. My parents' house has that, and that's the room that they use for like Christmas and special occasions. So you pop into the formal dining room or whatever.
And heaven forbid you ever be in that room outside of a holiday.
It just doesn't happen.
It's not allowed. It's against the rules.
It's illegal.
But yeah, that's what I remember about like you and growing up there anyways. I'm sure there was other things, but that's all I got.
Yeah. All right, let's spin the wheel for our next question.
I think I need to tune up the wheel. It's not sounding great.
Did your parents ever dislike any of your friends growing up?
Oh, 100%. And I would hear about it all the time.
Same.
Like as soon as they had an opinion about any one of my friends, like I would hear within the day. Like for an example, my dad did not like you growing up. I'm not even sure if he likes you to date.
I don't think so.
To be honest. And like he would be very vocal about it too, where he'd be like, that one friend of yours. He never had a reasoning either for anything he ever said about any of my friends. He would just be like, that friend of yours, blah blah blah. I don't like Whereas my mom, she'd usually like give reasons if she didn't like somebody, and they check out. Like as an adult, looking back on what she said about certain friends, like I'm not going to drop names on the podcast, but there's an idea. You remember the people that we hung out with in middle school who were kind of giant turds?
Yes.
She had lots of opinions about those people, and they were all correct. Those were good opinions.
Fair.
Well, what about your parents?
Yeah, they had many friends of mine that they did not like. They would usually give me reasons, and they were usually right. I will say. Like, they were pretty good judges of characters. There was one friend in particular when I was growing up who we had kind of an on and off friendship for many years, and they really did not like when I hung out with her because she was fucking mean. Like she would just turn on me. So they were like, can you just literally stop being friends with this girl, please? Please? And I was like, no, we're besties again.
I know. And then you think about years later, like today, for example, and you're like, yeah, they were right about that. That was a good call. That was a good call on their part.
Why did I hang out with her?
Right? All right. Should we spin for our next question?
Yes. How do you think teachers described you growing up?
Me? Oh, see, I feel like it was pretty obvious that I was a church girl, number one. And number two, I feel like it was also pretty obvious that I was, see, I was going to say quiet, but I feel like I wasn't really that quiet, but maybe quiet to, like, most people. But I feel like it was the reading thing is the thing. I don't think I was a quiet person necessarily, but I did like to read a lot, and reading doesn't involve talking. So I feel like those were primarily the two things where it's like, oh, Emily, the church girl who reads a lot. So I feel like that would be at the most what anybody would have talked about, you know?
See, for me, I have always had this problem. I thought I was really sneaky as a kid, but I don't think I am or have ever been, because I swear to God, every teacher I've ever had zeroes in on me and is like, I've just like notices my shit immediately, so I can never get away with anything. Because I always felt in school, I was like, how do they always fucking notice me? Like, why can I never get away with anything? And I think it's because I'm obnoxious.
You're like, why am I not more of a troublemaker? Why do I always get caught? I'm so clever.
I like just thought I could like, you know, chill out and like blend in, but I think I'm just like too, I don't know.
Truthfully, you've always had like a pop star personality though. Like, I don't know if that's like, it's just the kind of like personality that attracts attention though. Like, you can't go through your actions or your day-to-day life without being noticed in some kind of way. It's just the way that you are.
See, my dream as a kid, especially in middle school, was like, okay, I'll go to this class, and then because it's a substitute, I'll just like sneak out at some point and they'll never notice I'm as gone. But they would always just like immediately recognize me and like figure out what I was trying to do.
I am willing to bet that the teacher put in their notes, Jen will sneak away at some point. You will have to catch her. Because that's the thing. Like, you say that like you were like a troublemaker of some kind, or that you were seen as a troublemaker. I really just feel like it was your not wanting to be there. That was the biggest thing. Because you never really like, you weren't like a troublemaker in the sense of like bringing alcohol to school or something weird. You know what I mean? Like, you weren't really doing that kind of stuff, and you weren't, like, doing gang fights in the playground. But you did sneak away. Like, if there was one thing that was true about your existence in school, it was that you did not want to be there for anything. It did not matter what it was. You did not want to be there.
That is very true. I tried to get out of things so many times, and it was usually unsuccessful.
Usually, yeah. I'm trying to think if there was anything else from my end of things. But I feel like when you're one of those people who just kind of, like, slips under the radar, you don't really get a lot of, like, people telling you stuff.
All right, but shall we spin for our last question?
Yes. All right, what is the last question?
Is there anything that you lied about as a kid that you got away with?
See, I'm going to say no, but that's because when I was a kid, even if I was telling the truth about something, I was always met with suspicion. Like, I would love to ask my parents what the reasoning behind that was, but, like, for a long time, even when I was, like, from, like, childhood to, like, when I was in high school, I would always be told that I was, like, up
to something.
Yeah. Oh, you're suspicious. You're always up to something. Like, you're just, like, a sneaky kid. You're doing these different things. But, like, I was like always telling the truth about stuff, but then I was still getting in trouble for it somehow. So I don't actually think I really got away with anything, because it's like, okay, you're telling the truth and we think you're lying about something, but then then I didn't even really try lying about something because it wouldn't have mattered, I guess. So I don't have anything that I can remember off the top of my head.
See, I don't think I really got away with a lot as, like, a kid. I feel like I got away with more as a teen.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, do you have any guesses as to what my story is about tonight?
Oh my gosh. I am going to guess that your story is, it's going to be about a golden child who does some kind of, like, crazy crime. And the parents are going to be like, no, they would never do that. And then the youngest sibling, for some reason, gets sent to jail. Even though they weren't there.
No, we're not telling the story of my life.
Oh yeah,
today.
yeah. I got confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about what else. You brought up teachers, so maybe it also has to do with, like, maybe a part of the crime involves, like, a teacher, like they stole from a teacher or something. I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, you're not quite there today.
Naturally.
So,
I never am, so
I'll just get right into it.
Yes, ma'am.
Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips was born in Allentown, Pennsylvania on March 17th, 1984 to Steve and Melissa Phillips. Steve was a drug addict and an alcoholic and was violent towards his son, and Melissa reported that both her and her son lived in fear of Steve. Steve imposed really strict rules on his son and got angry if he had other children in the house when he was not present. Steve particularly disliked young girls. Melissa said she never understood why her husband disliked girls. Eventually, Steve decided to relocate the family from Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania to Florida, which separated Josh from his half-brothers Daniel and Benji. In November 1998, Josh was 14 years old and living with his family in Jacksonville, Florida. Neighbors described Josh as quiet and friendly. Josh was friends with an 8-year-old girl named Maddie Clifton, and according to Maddie's mother, Maddie never had any reason to be afraid of him. Josh had no arrests or history of violence. He was seen as a pretty good kid. His school teacher said he was a popular student who did not stand out, unlike me, apparently, describing him as fun and silly.
Ooh, that's a good one. I feel like that brings positive vibes to the table.
Yeah, it does bring positive vibes to the table, for sure.
Okay.
Get ready to lose all of those positive vibes.
Okay.
According to Josh, on November 3rd, 1998, he was home alone when Maddie, who lived across the road from him, came to his house asking to come outside and play baseball. Josh agreed, even though he was not allowed to have friends over while his parents were not home. Remember his dad's strict rules.
Yes.
As the two were playing baseball, Josh accidentally hit the ball into Maddie's eye, causing her to bleed, cry, and scream. Josh panicked, knowing his father would be home soon and fearing his reaction. Josh dragged Maddie into his house, saying that the clothing came off Maddie's lower body as he did so.
Okay, and how old are they supposed to be right now?
So Josh is 14 and Maddie's 8.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He hit her with the baseball bat to stop her from screaming before putting her under the base of his bed. When Steve returned home, Josh interacted with him for a period of time before returning to his room. When Josh did so, he discovered that Maddie was still alive and moaning under his bed. He removed the mattress, cut her throat, and stabbed her in the chest 7 times with a knife from a Leatherman tool, killing her. Maddie's disappearance was reported around 5 p.m. that day. Police and volunteers searched for Maddie for 6 days. Josh participated in the search. And most disturbing of all, he slept above her body, which was a rotting corpse, for an entire week.
A week?
So while they're all out searching for him and he's out there helping them, her body is literally under his bed, rotting.
That is so sick. That and twisted. Like, I'm not even going to try and mentally put myself into the why that would happen. That's just absolutely not.
He later stated that he spent the following week living in denial, saying, "I was putting myself in a fantasy world where nothing had happened. That was my defense mechanism for everything I did when I was a kid. I never made the decision to ignore it. I just did." The FBI even became involved because local police had failed to yield results. A $100,000 reward was offered for anyone that could find a lead for Maddie's safe return. However, on November 10th, Josh's mom, Melissa, was cleaning her son's room and noticed that his waterbed was leaking. Or so she thought. She found a wet spot near his bed, and she decided to investigate.
I did not realize that this was a waterbed. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So she searched the room and found Maddie's body, immediately leaving the house to report the incident to the police. So, honestly, that's great, because I know a lot of these stories where the parents, find out their kid did something horrible like that, and they literally just try and cover it up for them.
Oh, yeah. This is exactly the way that you should respond in a situation where, nobody obviously wants this to happen, where you find out that your kid did something terrible, but the leaving immediately, not touching anything, and going to the police is the best thing that you could do. Because that's the thing, is people think that they're helping their kids by covering stuff up or whatever, but honestly,
they're making it so much worse.
Significantly worse, especially because it's not going to take away from them being caught. The only thing you're doing is
implicating yourself.
You're trying to prevent the inevitable, and then also trying to alleviate the guilt off your child, which if they're going to be doing something like that, they should 100% feel guilty about it.
They should feel really fucking bad if they murder a 8-year-old girl.
Which is weird to me anyways, because I'm just trying to think about because you're saying that. Because I'm trying to remember what it was that you said. So she came to his house and asked for him to play with her outside. Was that it?
Yeah, so she went over to his house, asked for him to play baseball with her. This is according to Josh. So there is some question about whether or not this
because in my brain,
is true.
I'm thinking that I know 14-year-olds, especially because, I am currently related to somebody who was 14 a month ago. And they would not willingly hang out with an 8-year-old. That is not to mention an 8-year-old who's the opposite gender. There is just a very, very big difference in the types of interests at those age groups and everything. So that's already very weird to me.
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get to the reason why.
Wow, can't wait.
Yeah, so police were stunned because they had previously searched the Phillips home 3 times, but mistaken the stench of Maddie's rotting corpse for the smell of several birds the family kept as pets. And as someone who owns birds in their home, I'm sorry, but they do not smell like rotting corpse.
No.
Like, there's no fucking way.
Bird poop?
Unless they're dead birds.
That is not the same. That will never be the same.
Literally no. I'm sorry, but no.
Like, stinky, yes, but in very different ways.
Yeah. So Josh was arrested later that day at his school and confessed to the murder within hours. Prosecutors disputed some parts of Josh's story. State Attorney Harry Shorstein suggested the murder may have been sexually motivated, saying that Josh had talked about sexual matters with both Maddie and her older sister. The autopsy found no evidence of sexual assault, though prosecutors argued the lack of dirt and sand on Maddie's body did not support Josh's assertion that her clothes came off as he dragged her into his room.
Right.
Like, here's the thing. Your clothes don't just, like, fall off that easily.
No, the whole point, here's the thing. The whole point of pants is that they can stay on your body. Nobody would wear pants if they fell off your body every time you put them on. They don't just fly off. Like, that's not the point of pants.
I feel like you could probably drag me on the floor and my pants would stay on.
If anything, my shirt might fly off if you're dragging me by my feet, because that's just what happens. But, like, no. Like, that's just not something that happens.
It's weird. It's a weird thing.
It's just, it doesn't add up. It's a little super sus.
It's got the stank on it.
It for sure does, yep.
Prosecutors also noted that no blood was found in the backyard or on the baseball that Josh said he had struck Maddie with. And argued that this did not support his version of events, which I would kind of lean towards that as well. You think if the whole inciting incident is that he hit her with a baseball and she was bleeding and crying and screaming, and that's why he had to drag her into the house so his dad wouldn't get mad at him, there would be something at least on that baseball.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like I get that hitting somebody with a baseball in the eye might be an accident, but if you're thinking the way that a kid would think, you would either try to find your parents or their parents first. The resolution to that isn't, you're crying too loud, get in my house. Like, you'd be like, oh, let's go find an adult to help.
That's the thing. If you're worried about your dad's reaction and you're not supposed to be hanging out with anyone, why would you bring that into your home?
That's the thing.
Would you not, like, try and take that situation somewhere else?
Yeah, you'd be like, I know I'm going to get in trouble because as soon as you come in my house, my dad's going to know we were hanging out. Go to your own house. Find your mom.
Yeah. I don't know.
Weird.
So Josh was tried as an adult. The trial was moved from Duval County, Florida to Polk County over concerns about publicity in Jacksonville. Josh's lawyer, Richard D. Nicholas, did not call a single witness for the defense, a move the prosecutors later said was a surprising and risky strategy. The lawyer, Richard, intended to base much of the defense on a closing argument to the jury where he stated Maddie's death was an act that began as an accident and deteriorated through panic that bordered on madness. According to Josh, his lawyer, Richard, never attempted to question him over the events of the murder and only played chess with him when visiting him in prison prior to the trial. Melissa disagreed with Richard's strategy, though Steve insisted on letting the lawyer do as he pleased. It kind of feels like the dad just wants to get rid of the son at this point, because this sounds like literally the worst lawyer of all time.
Yeah, like that I just don't even have words for that. That's crazy.
Richard discouraged Josh's parents from allowing him to testify, and accordingly, Josh never spoke during his trial. The trial started on July 6th, 1999, and lasted only 2 days, an unusually short time due to the defense calling no witnesses. Jurors took over 2 hours to convict Josh of first-degree murder. He was later sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He was not eligible for the death penalty as he was under 16. During the trial, the defense attempted to introduce scans from a neurologist showing bilateral lesions on the frontal lobe of Josh's brain, which are associated with panic and impaired judgment. While the prosecution wanted to discuss evidence that Josh had looked at pornography on his computer, the judge, however, ruled that both pieces of evidence were inadmissible. Which I don't really know how pornography really would ever be. Like, he's a boy. Like, I don't know. Don't they all look at it?
That's probably why the judge was like, yeah, get that out of here. Because he's like, yeah, obviously he's going to have porn. Like, it would be more suspicious if he didn't.
Like, he's a boy.
Yeah, the lack of would be more of a red flag.
So on June 27th, 2000, Steve Phillips was killed in a car accident. And it kind of seems like this was a bit of a turning point for Melissa, like Josh's mom, because I feel like at this point, she's more free to advocate for her son in a way that she wants to, instead of listening to the dad, who just doesn't seem to want to deal with it at all.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's pretty fair.
So in 2002, the Florida 2nd District Court of Appeal upheld Josh's conviction. In December 2004, Melissa began to seek a new trial for her son, stating his young age at the time of the murder should have carried more weight in his sentence. In November 2005, the Supreme Court of Florida set a hearing for the following month to discuss whether Josh should receive a new trial. In 2008, two of the officials most responsible for Josh's life sentence, Prosecutor Harry and Sheriff Nat Glover, admitted to having second thoughts about giving a life sentence without the possibility of parole to a 14-year-old. Harry said that he regretted not offering Josh a second-degree murder plea, which would have given the judge more discretion in sentencing, and has voiced his support for eventual clemency or parole for Josh. As of 2008, Josh declined to write a letter of apology to Maddie's family, saying they deserved an apology from him in person, as they would not be able to see his sincerity in a letter. Maddie's mother subsequently stated that she had no interest in talking to Josh, which I feel like is fair.
Yeah.
He murdered her 8-year-old daughter.
Exactly, yeah. I get it. Like, it, you know.
Yeah. People need closure in their own ways.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it.
In 2012, the Supreme Court of the United States case of Miller v. Alabama ruled that sentencing juveniles to mandatory life in prison without parole is unconstitutional. In November 2015, Josh's attorneys were considering Miller v. Alabama as a bias to file a resentencing hearing. In September 2016, Josh's attorneys successfully appealed the court, and he was granted a new sentencing hearing, which was held in June 2017. Meanwhile, in prison, Josh had completed his GED, although he was initially told he was too young to do it and later took college classes by correspondence. Josh was working as a paralegal in prison, assisting other inmates with their appeals, and also working as a tutor for inmates. He played guitar in a band and participated in Christian religious services and yoga.
And yoga.
Nothing
holier than a yoga mat. And meditation time.
Getting zen in prison is very ideal, apparently.
Well, I mean, it seems like a very peaceful place to be in.
Oh, does it?
Yes.
So during his 2017 appeal, the prosecution acknowledged that Josh had been a model prisoner. At the hearing, Maddie's mother requested that his sentence be upheld, which again, I feel like is fair coming from the victim's parent.
Yep.
In November 2017, Josh was resentenced to life in prison, but is eligible for resentencing again in 2023. In December 2019, the Florida 1st District Court of Appeal upheld the life sentence, saying it will be reviewed again and can be modified in 2023 based on the demonstrated maturity and rehabilitation. Josh subsequently appealed to the Supreme Court of Florida, who turned down his request in June 2020, As it is customary, they do not explain their reasons for declining to hear the case. As of 2024, Josh is still imprisoned in the Cross City Correctional Institution.
Wow.
And that's the end. So I really want to hear your thoughts on what you think went down and if you think it's fair that was sentenced to life at 14.
Yeah. See, I can see why people have so many conflicted feelings about this case, because, like, on one hand, so I might as well ask, just because I'm not totally sure if I caught this or not in your story, did they actually ever end up convicting him of sexual assault in this case, or was that kind of unconfirmed?
It was unconfirmed, so they couldn't really prove whether it did happen or did not. He just got convicted on the murder charge.
Did they have a motivation that they did convict him of, or a motivation that they stated, or he mentioned at some point for this? Like, did he ever, like, say why he did it?
He's maintained that it was an accident, and then that accident kind of turned into really poor judgment and, like, panic. So his whole thing was, it was an accident, and then he made a bad decision by bringing her into the house, and it just kept getting worse and worse, which I can see for a kid, like, how something like that could happen, but it just doesn't quite add up for me.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, a missing element that wasn't mentioned. So I don't know what that could be, though. And it is also weird to me that the dad was so vocal too about his dislike of children that are girls too, that it, like, to the point where it was relevant enough for them to bring it up in the case. Like, that also sits really weird with me. But I don't know. I can see why people have so many conflicted feelings, though, because then on one hand it's like, okay, like, this is a super terrible thing that he did, 14 killing an 8-year-old, like, that's not, but, like, on the other hand too, I can see why people are like, but also a child, like, killing another child, like, there's so many elements of, like, maybe not totally understanding what's going on, not making the best, like, judgment calls, like that, like, those are all things that check out for me, and I understand them.
For sure.
So I can see why there's some regret in that aspect, like, to be sentenced to life, because was it life without parole, you said? I know you said life, but
yeah, so his original sentencing was life without parole, right. And then he was able to later appeal it for life with parole.
Okay. Because I would say in this particular situation, even though there's very clearly some details missing that would probably, clear up exactly, like I said, the motivations and, like, how this happened, with what we know for sure, I would say that life without parole is a little extreme because it is a kid who murdered a kid. Like, there's a story that you talked about, I think it was, like, a couple years ago, where there was, like, a girl who didn't understand what death even meant, so that when, like, they ended up accidentally killing somebody, they didn't even really understand what that meant. And, like, I know that 14 is old enough to obviously know what death means, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily the age where they have, the best critical thinking skills or some of these other things, right?
For sure. And I feel like, especially if you do have such a, like, fear of a parent, like, getting mad at you for doing something wrong. That's another thing too.
Like, that also really skews a kid's motivations, I think, if they have an overly strict parent.
I can remember, like, there were certain things that I did as a kid where I knew my parents would be really mad at me if they found out. So I did things to try and hide that, were stupid. So I can kind of see, like, I can see where he might have, like, been coming from, but it does really feel like there's something missing. And it just, like, the timeline doesn't quite add up. It feels like it's, like, covering something up still, you know?
That's the thing. Like, I would not be totally surprised if, like, the how she ended up at the house was maybe not true, or, maybe one of these other things, like something that seems small but would really give a lot of context to what happened. Because right now, with, like, what he says, it just seems like enough things that, like, wouldn't normally happened in a way that they wouldn't normally be dealt with. Which, again, could just be me making an adult judgment call on that, but I don't know. Like I said, it's still a little fishy to me. Like, I don't know how I feel about it necessarily, but because of that, I don't know if life without parole would have been the right call without knowing more. Like, I think life with parole does check out a little bit more for me, because I do think there's, like, so much growth that happens, and, like, so much, like, mental development between the ages of, like, 14 to 24 or 34 or whatever, where he, like, you literally become a different person in that time. Like, you still maintain your core values, but, like, maybe the way he makes decisions would change, and this wouldn't have happened if he was, like, 5 years older or something, potentially. Like, I think there's room for doubt. But, again, hard to say without knowing more.
Definitely. And I don't know if we ever really will know his true motivation, because, you know.
Yeah, if it's been maintained for this long and the judgment's already passed, it's not like, you know, somebody's going to come out one day and be like, blah, blah, blah. But they might. It could happen.
You never know.
You never know. But yeah, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. It's kind of, it's definitely a little trickier with, like, when kids kill and that kind of thing. But I would say that this, to me, does feel different, though, than the other week when you shared your story about the 14-year-old who killed I think it was, like, 23 or 24-year-old woman. The
teacher, yeah.
Yeah, that, to me, because I don't remember what the ruling you said on that was, if it was life without parole, that would sit better with me, because that has a little bit of additional, I guess, levels to it, a little bit more.
It feels more thought out. It feels more premeditated.
Yeah, like, there was just more details. Like, for me, the full story's not here enough for this one for me to be like, oh yeah, like, I feel confident saying this. But I don't know.
For sure.
Yeah, but that's what I got. Is there anything else that I said that made you think something, or anything that you wanted to share?
No, I pretty much feel like we're on the same page for this one, where I want to believe his side of things and really feel like this was just, like, a big mistake that just got way out of control. But I'm suspicious.
Definitely suspicious. But yeah, if you like today's episode, for some reason, you can leave us a review on any of the podcast hosting networks that you listen to, whether that's Apple or Spotify or something else. I don't know what there is, but if you like us,
YouTube,
sure,
we're now on YouTube.
Hey, that's cool. YouTube, then you can leave us 5 stars, because that helps us reach new listeners and it makes me feel good. So if you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it, and Jen probably would too. And beyond that, we also have our website, which is www.wheelofcrime.com, if you want to check us out on there and see a little bit about us. We also have our social media, which is on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Wheel of Crime. We do post on there, so go check that out. We also have our Patreon, if you want to donate to the show, which is Wheel of Crime at Patreon. We also have our email, which is wheelofcrime@gmail.com, if there's anything that you want to send us a message about, because we are always open to, receiving a message to the inbox, the DM. That's pretty cool. And lastly, if you have not heard this already with our closing notes, we do still have our Google Doc open on all of our social medias. If you listen to one of these stories and you're like, I know something, or I have a story that I'd like to share, or you guys have inspired me to talk about this, you can submit it on there and potentially get a feature on one of our listeners' episodes. We do a couple of them once a year. I think more than a couple now. I think it's like closer to 3 or 4, but you do have a chance to be featured if you submit a listener story to us using that method, and that's pretty cool, so go check that out.
Yes, and that's it. That's all. We'll see you next week for another new episode. Okay, bye.
Bye.